President Trump has been speaking in Indiana ahead of the November midterm elections. It comes as the president hopes not to see any unnecessary violence ahead of the elections, which many say will be a test of his popularity. During his rally, he threatened to get involved unless the FBI and the Justice Department, quote, started doing their job and investigated former rival Hillary Clinton.
Our Justice Department and our FBI have to start doing their job and doing it right and doing it now. Because people are angry. People are angry. What's happening is a disgrace. And at some point, I wanted to stay out, but at some point, if it doesn't straighten out properly, I want them to do their job. I will get involved and I'll get in there if I have to.
Let's get some reaction now to this and to the ongoing build-up to the US midterms with political analyst and commentator Professor Peter Matthews, who joins us from Long Beach in California. Hello there, Peter. Always a pleasure. We have a saying over here in the UK, sounding like a broken record. I don't know if you have it in the States, but the election was 2 years ago. He won it. Why is he still going on about Hillary Clinton?
Because he's in quite a mess right now with investigations on his activities during the election and his campaign, and he just wants to deflect and away from that. So he's going after Hillary Clinton to take away attention from the investigation that Mr. Mueller is doing about him and his campaign. And that's pretty much it. And for him to even bring up the issue of potential violence, he even threatens that there's going to be violence if the Republicans lose the House and Senate or Congress. That is outrageous. It is completely against democracy. Violence and war are a breakdown of politics. And it's very wrong to even suggest that this could happen. It could intimidate voters and keep them from voting in the polls or going to the polls or voting for the party that they want to or the candidate they want to. It could keep them from doing that because the president is saying this could happen. I think it's out of line for doing that.
I mean, you mentioned the midterms. Just how pivotal are they for President Trump's popularity, I suppose, and his strength of leadership?
Very, extremely important. The midterm elections, like no other midterms, has brought Mr. Trump and his policies to the forefront and his style of governing. And the country is divided so much between those who condone what he's doing and support it, and those people who do not condone it and believe that he's not good for the legitimacy of the American system. And this is very strong feelings. It's called intensity, the problem of intensity. Robert Dahl, the great Yale political scientist, talked about the problem of intensity, which means the intensity of the amount of feeling that one side or the other has can actually put them over the top, regardless of their size. And this is going to be a very intense election. And it does matter how it turns out, because if the Democrats win the majority in the House, they could actually put a vote for articles of impeachment against Trump and put him on trial. And then if the Senate falls to the Democratic side, if they get at least a two-thirds vote or a coalition with some Republicans to build up a two-thirds majority that could vote to remove the president, that's exactly what is going to happen. And Mr. Trump knows very well that will happen. That's why he's trying to rouse his people up to vote and to get to the polls and talking about these things to get those evangelicals, to get the churches, in the churches, to preach about voting on November the 6th. It's really remarkable and pretty dangerous and kind of alarming.
A few months out from the midterms, Peter, what is your hunch at the moment? Is there a real feeling that the Democrats could seize control of Congress?
I think it's absolutely likely that the Democrats will seize control of the House of Representatives, because that's the House that most directly reflects the people's sentiment, since there's district-by-district elections throughout the nation, whereas the Senate is less controlled by the people directly, and it's possible that the Trump senators from the red states will hang on because of the way the Senate is configured. You know, some of the senators there's two senators from each state, regardless of the size of the state, and some of these states are just hardcore Trump supporters, and I think that is a chance it'll be difficult for Democrats to win a majority, certainly not a two-thirds majority in the Senate. You never know, though. If the blue wave is strong enough, all of it could happen.
How much should we be reading into the left-of-centre primary wins? In New York, it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and in Florida, Andrew Gillum.
Quite a bit, quite significant, especially with Gillum and Cortez, both of them, because Cortez could have been, and some people have written her off as being from a very progressive, liberal, left-wing district, but yet her message resonates across the country, and she's a remarkable candidate with lots of charisma and great ideas, modeled very much along Bernie Sanders' policies, and Bernie endorsed her. And Bernie endorsed Andrew Gillum in Florida, the Democratic nominee who actually beat traditional Democratic establishment people remarkably, and with Bernie's support and also his own charisma and his own platform, which is very much like the Cortez platform. He doesn't call himself a democratic socialist, but he's definitely a social democrat in many ways. And I think it's very remarkable. It's going to be interesting, like a Trump against Sanders, because the man DeSantis, the congressman running on the Republican side, is heavily supported by Donald Trump, and he's trying to follow in Donald Trump's shadows and capture Trump's support. So he's made remarkable and terrible things, statements like voters should not get involved with monkeying around with having socialism, and he's referring to Andrew Gillum's program, which is more or less a New Deal Democrat, more or less a social democratic program that's been used in the United States. But use the word monkeying around has some shades of racism to it, since Andrew Gillum is an African American. It's a terrible, terrible way to talk, and something that you would imagine that Donald Trump would say in a campaign.
Yeah, Peter, it's going to be a fascinating few months ahead, isn't it? Thank you as always for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.